Amendment looms large when it comes to guns. It reads a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, where does this latest legal matter fit into this larger conversation? Let's bring in Rob Pincus, Executive VP of Second Amendment Organization and an advocate for responsible gun ownership, gun rights, and private gun making. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off with your initial reaction to the city of Philadelphia's lawsuit against those ghost gun kit makers.
Good evening, Christian. It's great to be with you guys again. Unfortunately, we're talking about tragedies. We're talking about people who've been killed. And as usual, instead of actually looking at root causes and really trying to get to the end of the negative outcomes involving firearms, a certain type of firearm or a certain process through which people own firearms is being attacked. But my thoughts on the lawsuit is that they're frivolous on a couple of levels. Even being familiar specifically with both Polymer80 and JSD Supply, having been present when JSD Supply is conducting business of selling the kits and the parts at gun shows near Philadelphia, not technically in the city of Philadelphia. I know what they do. I know how they do it. I know how much they care about the responsible use of those kits, both at the company that makes the kits and the company in Pennsylvania that sells them. The one that's most popular for selling them, honestly, obviously there's other companies that sell them. It's disappointing that this is the angle they're taking in Philly.
Last year, we saw the families of victims of the Sandy Hook shooting win a settlement from a more traditional gun manufacturer in 2022, which was called a first of its kind settlement because of the amount. Is there any legal precedent with suing so-called ghost gun manufacturers?
Well, there's, we got to put those air quotes up on ghost guns, right? The reality is that under the Pennsylvania Uniform Firearms Act, which is the state level gun registration law, and all the laws governing guns fall under it. The kits, the precursors, something like what I'm holding right here, it is illegal for me to turn this into a firearm right now in the city of Denver. It is legal to make this into a firearm in Pennsylvania, and this is not considered a firearm. So the precedent of people that have been sued or people that have gotten settlements successfully from firearms manufacturer really has nothing to do with this case. The idea that we're attacking people who sell a product that someone has to turn into a gun as if they were gun manufacturers is on its face unfortunate. Yeah. The idea of suing a manufacturer for any product because someone uses it improperly, whether it's a car, a hammer, a saw, a torch, or a firearm, that's something that we've talked a lot about over the last 30 years. And the only precedents really are cities that have failed to successfully sue gun manufacturers and others in the firearms community, going back to the 1990s.
And that was a lower receiver part of a firearm that you were holding up there.
Well, no, this is a precursor. So this is not a firearm, right? This is technically a firearm. This is a manufactured by a company that traditionally makes guns that I bought with a background check and all that. You can see it has parts installed in it. These parts cannot be installed in this piece of plastic until a lot of work is done to relieve certain areas inside of the frame and drill holes that have to be aligned properly. And then other work has to be done with all the parts to get this working as a firearm. And this is the kit that JSD Supply sells, that I've seen them selling at gun shows, asking for ID, clearly with signs there saying you must be 18 to purchase, which are all things in the lawsuit they're being accused of not doing. And again, it's representing this as if it's a firearm or the lower receiver or the frame of a firearm is inappropriate, because this is not. It's no different than a paperweight or a toy gun that is not capable of actually firing ammunition until a lot of work is done.
Yeah, Rob, this is the point I wanted to get to here. You're a supporter of responsible gun ownership, and for many people constructing their own private firearms, that's something that they are all about as well. But as we saw in Philadelphia, so-called ghost guns can also turn up in crimes. So where does the solution lie to stop gun violence and reduce crime while also respecting the Second Amendment? By most accounts, Philadelphia is dealing with a problem, and the leadership there, the police department there, they've seen a rise in the number of ghost guns that have been seized. But where's the line here? How do we thread this needle while respecting the Second Amendment, but also trying to stop gun violence and reduce crime when it comes to ghost guns or so-called ghost guns?
Yeah, the problem is the same regardless of whether somebody's using a stolen gun, a gun that they, filed the serial numbers off of, a gun that they purchased legally. I mean, the vast majority of the mass shootings, the ones we really think about, the mall shootings, the school shootings, the church shootings, are conducted with guns that were either stolen but had been traditionally purchased with background checks, or were purchased by the person themselves who committed these heinous acts with background checks and purchased legally, just like someone who privately makes firearms legally could end up committing a crime with it or could have that firearm stolen. So going after the type of firearm or even going after the firearm itself, we know this is a dead end. As a former law enforcement officer, I'm familiar with the idea that criminals get their hands on guns that can't be traced back to them. My father dealt with this in Atlantic City, not too far from Philadelphia, in the 1970s, finding guns that had been stolen and couldn't be traced back to the proper owner, or couldn't certainly be traced to the person who committed the crime. So the idea of ghost guns isn't new. The ability or the opportunity, I think, that some politicians and that some organizations are taking to attack private gun makers who are engaged in a hobby, 99% of whom, and everyone that I personally know who also own traditionally made firearms, have already gone through the background checks. It's just an unfortunate, honestly, it's a headline grab, like much gun control is, where we really need to be focusing on the crime and the criminals.
Real quick, Rob, the solution, what would it be here?
Well, I think it's all the same solutions we have to all of the criminal issues, right? We have issues of poverty, we have issues of opportunity, we have issues of mental health are obviously a huge part of this issue, especially when we see mass shootings, or the number one negative outcome involving firearms that results in death is suicide. The 60% of the deaths involving firearms in our country are suicides, self-inflicted by people who probably owned guns for the vast majority of their lives and are honestly being chased away from proactive mental health by onerous red flag laws and the weaponization of mental health, when we really need to be proactive about that in all of our communities, but especially those with high crime rates, especially the violent crime.
I appreciate you bringing that scope and scale to our attention, because that is important to add context to this conversation. Rob Pincus, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Coming up.